This is one of those days, it's very good that we're not doing a live show or I wouldn't have been able to talk, which would probably make some people happy, but we're going to get through the show and do what we can. Who is we? Me, Danny Thompson. Glad to have you with me here on Countdown to Restoration, counting down the horrible days of what we call the Biden regime with the resident thief in chief. That's right, thief in chief, yeah. Thief in chief, yeah. I don't know how his voice is doing. He never really talks, but obviously he's excited. He's always excited. So here we go. We've got a really full show, but I want to start with this, what I think shows just everything that's wrong with America. First of all, there's no black person there or a person of color. Second of all, adults are just treating kids horribly. This shows everything, this clip of people trying to get a baseball foul ball. Yes, let's see that again. Yes. Clearly, the woman has the ball at first, but then it bounces into the hands of the little girl. And what does the woman do? Grab it from the hands of the little girl, who has to go back up the stairs, sad because the grown-up grabbed the baseball from the little girl. That, ladies and gentlemen, pretty much sums up the U.S. at this point. Anyway, we must move on. We have so much more to show you the state of the country, such as Dr. Rachel Levin. Yes, this is the state of the United States of America. Not very good, is it? Pray for her, him. Starting to rub off on me, needs great help, and so does this country. That's who is leading us. That's who was leading Pennsylvania in their COVID crisis. That person is in crisis. What else is leading us? Secular Democrats of America, excuse me. I'm not in pain. I just sound like I am. Leading us to a godless state and doing it proudly as they push their evil agenda. Oh, we have so much today. So much. We have, from the Catholic League, President Bill Donahue. This is the biggest assault I've ever seen on Christianity. Yes, and that's what they want. That's what they want. They want to remove Christianity. And it's not just me that's saying it. I mean, everybody realizes it. Let's look at this. Religious organizations may lose federal funding if they refuse to comply with the Equality Act. It's not a law yet, but it is proposed. And it's probably going to pass the House, and then it just depends on the Senate. The pretend president, the thief in chief, the commander of lies, will sign it if it gets to his desk. Religious organizations may lose federal funding if they refuse to comply with the Equality Act, Catholic League President Bill Donahue said on the Todd Starnes radio show. This is the biggest assault I've ever seen on Christianity, he said. Donahue, a fierce defender of religious liberty, told Starnes that if Democrats pass the Equality Act, religious organizations are at risk of being sued or losing federal funding. And you may say, well, why do they have federal funding? Well, because some of them are hospitals. Yeah, and there's a lot of federal funding that goes into hospitals. Catholic hospitals right now refuse to perform abortions, Donahue said. Good for them. Under the Equality Act, they would be sued for pregnancy discrimination because being pregnant is its own sex. It's its own gender, even though it's temporary. Is it temporary for men that are pregnant? I don't know. But anyway, excuse me. And if you don't go along and perform abortions, which Catholic hospitals never will, then you will lose federal funding. And of course, the thief in chief is a good Catholic who understands this. All right. The Equality Act is a bill in the United States Congress that, if passed, would amend the Civil Rights Act to prohibit discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity in employment, housing, public accommodations, public education, federal funding, credit, and, get this, the jury system. So if you're a lawyer picking a jury, you can't throw the transgender person off. You can't decide not to choose the very openly gay person or I guess the pregnant person. It's just so bizarre. Donahue wrote in an op-ed on Monday that the Equality Act would prohibit Catholics, evangelicals, whom there is a war against, excuse me, Orthodox Jews, Mormons, Muslims, and many other religious communities. So we continue on in the next slide. Many other religious communities from raising religious liberty objections to any of the aforementioned rights which would result in religious entities becoming secularized. I hate that word. I hate it so bad I can't even say it sometimes. Now then, they will give exemptions to Muslims. I'm telling you, they will. You just have to wait and see. It's not in the law yet, but it will be there. Donahue explained how in 1993, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, 1993, not under Donald Trump, was passed and how it restores and protects religious liberty. This act allows religious organizations to not perform abortions, and in the cases of adoption agencies, allow only straight married couples to adopt from their agency, which they are attacking right now. The Equality Act exempts itself from the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. So they're going to pass a law that is exempted from the law. Yeah, I know. They're going to pass a law that's exempted from the law. So, yeah. Also from the Constitution, I guess. Of course, that's nothing new. The Equality Act exempts itself from the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, said Donahue, meaning that all houses of worship and religious institutions have lost their First Amendment right to object to anything. In other words, what we have been telling you, what so many pastors have been saying for so long, they won't stop till you can't resist anything. I've told you about this on Fridays, what they've been planning, and they're working closely with the House, closely with key senators, and they're trying to implement their plans. If they can't get it done through law, they will through executive order. Host Todd Starnes discussed that he believes that this act is going to be used to attempt to shut down the church. And because of time, you can go on and read it yourself. Just look up Todd Starnes and Mr. Donahue, and you will find what they have to say. And you may, oh no, that's good. That's the way it should be. Well, okay, then you probably voted for the regime and you're very happy. But remember, what comes on one group will come on another. You may say, well, I don't belong to any groups. Well, They'll get you. As we all experience the dark winter of Biden, Pelosi, and Harris, and Schumer, who's not in here, together. All right, where are we going? This is just kind of a little flow chart to help you understand things. Oh, and we need to move this with immigration, and we're not quite there yet. So, we're going to do COVID first. All right. All right. California coronavirus variant may spread faster, inflict severe disease, early data suggests. So, we weren't satisfied with a UK variant. We weren't satisfied with a Brazilian variant. And we were not satisfied with the South African variant. California had to come up with its own variant. That's right. And keeping with California's new standards of being the worst at everything, this is the worst one. This is the worst variant, they think. So, forget those vaccinations, because none of them seem to do very well against this variant. More news will be coming out on that, I'm sure, as we are all in peril of mask wearing for the rest of our lives. In fact, I have been told by those that follow evolution carefully that within the next 200 years, humans will just, start growing masks over their faces, as part of survival. So, I'm not sure, as we become more socially aware and as we become less and less systemically racist, I'm sure there won't be black masks as we wear today, or white ones, probably just little rainbow masks. Because we'll all be trans or intersectional or something. In 200 or 300 years, we will have adapted to nobody will be heterosexual. How will we have children? Well, men are having babies now. It's not a problem. Don't worry about it. Go to sleep and rest easy. Nature will take its course. Now, speaking of nature, what does this have to do with nature? That a judge bans enforcement of Biden's 100-day deportation pause? What everything is 100 days with them. 100 days is 100 days to them. What does that have to do with nature? Well, it's just the nature of things. If you tell everyone south of our border that the border is open, they come. And if you tell them we're not going to deport you, they come. Now, we do have some immigration. No, this is COVID news. I've got everything out of order. This is COVID news.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. A New York related question, if I may.
Sure.
I know you've been asked about whether the president has confidence in Governor Andrew Cuomo, given all the controversy surrounding the nursing home issues in New York during the pandemic. But more broadly, I'd like to ask if there are any lessons to be learned here, if the administration believes that, or has, kicked off any discussions in terms of what type of role the federal government should play in providing guidance during an outbreak of a future infectious disease to nursing homes, and whether there should be some sort of standardized data collection so that we don't run into these issues with states providing different data at different times.
Sure. Well, I think there are a lot of lessons learned from what we've gone through as a country over the last year. And as you know, New York is one of the hardest hit states in the country, and earliest states hit hard in the country, was kind of on the front lines of that, and the challenges that came up. I will say that our focus at this point in time is on working with governors from across the country, from red states and blue states, and working with them to.
Yes, we're not going to touch the Cuomo question. We're not going to. We're not going to talk about how you should not put COVID patients in nursing homes. We're not going to do that. We're just avoiding that. And if you keep up with the once untouchable Governor Cuomo, you'll find now they're talking about what a sexist person he was, how he just had a horrible work atmosphere. And I'm sure when you listen to him talk, you wouldn't think that he's a pain. But anyway, we are hoping he gets his reckoning soon. Now then, I've told you he's going to resign. They're going to let him off. He made someone mad and started pushing too much his own way, and bam. Here we go about, what is this about? Oh, governors not following national guidelines. So this one's interesting.
Our team at the State Department, but it would probably be more direct if you follow up with them directly.
Okay, and one more on vaccines. What does the White House think when they see a governor like the Democratic governor of Connecticut, Ned Lamont, who says he thinks if he goes his own way, not with the national recommendations, to distribute vaccines just based on age, then he can get them out faster and more equitably than if he follows the recommendations from the federal level?
Well, we make recommendations at the federal level for a reason, because there are groups that we feel should be prioritized, whether they're frontline workers, healthcare workers, individuals over a certain age, as you noted. And our objective, of course, is to get to the stage where there's recommendations for people who are much younger, who don't have health conditions that would mean they would qualify. So that's the reason we lay them out as we do. Obviously, governors make different choices about the prioritization and the prioritization order, but we stand by the guidelines we've recommended at a national level.
Yes, that's why we give them. Everybody's supposed to follow them, and don't remind the country that even Democrats are having problems with this federal takeover of vaccinations because it's not working. Everywhere they tried to do it on a racially equitable basis, no one shows up. And they just waste days. They waste all the vaccines because it's they have to vaccinate people of color. And that's fine. They need vaccinations too. But let's just get everybody vaccinated. I'm telling you, just drive vans through neighborhoods. I don't understand why this is so hard. Even the pretend president said, we're going to send mobile units in. Just do it. Again, judge bans enforcement of Biden's 100-day deportation pause, which is very paused. And then we show you these beautiful little container-like living quarters, because it does come into play in the next question as we switch from Corona to immigration. And whom we've already seen in the first of his cameo appearance, Mr. Peter Ducey, Jen's favorite reporter. You can tell by the way she reacts when she calls on him.
Thank you, Jen. We spoke yesterday about immigration and this facility, HHS facility in Carrizo Springs, Texas, for migrant children. And you said it is not kids in cages. We've seen some photos now of containers. Is there a better description? Is it kids in containers instead of kids in cages? What is the White House's description of this facility?
Well, let me give a broader description of what's happening here. We have a number of unaccompanied minors, children who are coming into the country without their families. What we are not doing, what the last administration did, was separate those kids, rip them from the arms of their parents at the border. We are not doing that. That is immoral, and that is not the approach of this administration.
All right, we pause there for one reason. What is this subject about? It's about unaccompanied minors. And how does she deflect here? She says, we, unlike the past administration, are not ripping children out of the arms of their parents. Now, just help me with this. The word unaccompanied means no one is with you. You're a child, which means anyone under the age of 21 to them, I don't know. You're not coming with your parents. So see, they work this up to get people saying, yeah, we shouldn't be doing that. I'm glad they're not. Well, they're not, because these are what? Unaccompanied minors. They're alone, no parents. No parents are holding them in their arms.
These kids, we have a couple of options. We can send them back home and do a dangerous journey back. We are not doing that either. That is also putting them at risk. We can quickly transfer them from CBP to these HHS-run facilities. That's one option. Or we can put them with families and sponsors without any vetting. There were some problems that process ran into as well. We've chosen the middle option. And these HHS facilities, this is one of them you're referring to, we had to expand and open additional facilities because there was not enough space in the existing facilities, and if we were to abide by COVID protocols. That's the process and the step. This facility in Texas, which has been reopened, has been revamped, there are teachers, there is medical facilities, and our objective is to move these kids quickly from there to vetted, sponsored families, and to places where they can safely be. This is a difficult situation. It's a difficult choice. That's the choice we've made.
So just one step back from that, we've been talking to people down at the border who say that right now DHS and the Border Patrol are using the same kind of facilities now that they did during the Trump administration, and that there's a facility right now, it's in Donna, Texas instead of McAllen, Texas, but it's tents and chain link fence around it. And so
a CBP facility before they're transferred to the HHS facility, is that what you're referring to?
Yes, and the
Now again, we pause because she is acting like Customs and Border Patrol is separate from the federal government. Oh, a CBP facility? See, that's not, we're talking about HHS, Health and Human Services. CBP, we expect that from them. They're not even really part of us. They're horrible people, but that's separate. She's not saying that, but that is the inference given.
Issue would be that just in the last couple days, they had hundreds of kids that they were holding for over 72 hours, which is the legal limit to keep somebody in a temporary facility. So I'm just curious why.
Well, let's be clear though, because I know you want to be clear with the public about the differences. The CBP facilities, which you're right, the objective is to move kids, unaccompanied minors, as quickly as possible, under 72 hours, to these HHS sponsored facilities, which is the one where we've been referring to in Texas. They are two different things.
Wait a minute. It's not the objective. It is the law. It is the legal requirement that they be moved out of the initial holding places within 72 hours. Now, when the Trump administration would say, we're doing this, we're overwhelmed, they didn't get any leeway. It was, well, we're going to take you to court and sue you. But now, no, that's the objective. See, and he doesn't challenge her on that because, after all, what's the point?
There were some delays last week because of weather and because some of these facilities to safely move these kids to did not have power and were not in a place where they had the capacity to take in these kids and do it safely. That is not our objective. That is not our goal. So some unfortunately did stay 4 days, 5 days or longer, but the objective is to move them as quickly as possible to the HHS sponsored facilities.
Has the White House seen the comment from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who speaking about that HHS facility in Carrizo Springs, said this is not okay, never has been okay, never will be okay, no matter the administration or party?
Well, I think the difficulty is I haven't seen the full context of the quote or interview of the tweet that she shared, but I would say the difficulty is what I outlined earlier. We have kids coming across the border. It is heartbreaking. I think we all as human beings are heartbroken, as parents, as mothers, as fathers too. We only have a couple of choices. What we are not doing is dividing these kids and separating from their parents at the border, which is what the last administration did, and why President Biden, or then candidate Biden, and then candidate Harris were outspoken at the time about these kids being pulled from their parents. What we are doing is working as quickly as possible to process these kids into these HHS facilities, which have been revamped, which have medical and educational services available, so that we can then transfer them to families. That's what our approach is.
And so if there is this big difference, would the administration support, if it could be done safely because of COVID and with privacy concerns for the children in mind, would the administration support letting reporters in and press in to see what the difference is?
I think you'd have to talk to the Department of Homeland Security about that. There are obviously safety protocols about that, privacy concerns, but I certainly encourage you to reach out about that. Go ahead in the back.
Move on gladly from you, Peter Ducey, because you are causing me problems. And again, we're not pulling children from the arms of family members. We're not doing that, even though there's no family members to pull from because they're what? Unaccompanied minors. And also, another reason why they're keeping them there is because the homestead facility is not up and running yet, where they are going to fly or bus teenagers. See, they're just lying while we're all heartbroken. Even fathers. I love that. Fathers too. Fathers can be heartbroken over this. Usually it's just mothers, but normally fathers. How about mothers who are fathers? Fathers who are mothers? Women who are men. I mean, isn't it confusing? But anyway, so you see, life is not always easy as an unaccompanied minor, or as a press secretary who is fighting for her life there. And you know, she didn't even care about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. You know, I haven't seen that. And what does he say? I'll send it to you. Okay, yeah. All right, here's another question.
Some House and Senate Democrats have raised the possibility of putting a pathway for undocumented essential workers into a second reconciliation package. Pelosi even said it would be wonderful if it could fit. Does the president support that option?
I'm sure he'll have discussions and consultations with Speaker Pelosi, as he does frequently, and others about how they want to move the path forward on immigration. And he proposed the comprehensive bill with several components because he thinks they all are pivotal. You know, we haven't had any extensive conversations on that yet, so I don't have anything to read out for you.
Reconciliation or
say it again?
On a second reconciliation, you haven't had.
No, we'll see. We'll let Congress play out the process of what they want to propose or how they want to work through the components of.
Okay. Now, reconciliation bills are for budgetary items only. I'm not sure how making people citizens is part of the budget process, but they're going to try. They're going to try everything they can, every way they can, because they know it's not going to pass the Senate unless it's a a reconciliation bill, which only takes 51 votes to pass the Senate. And I mean, these people are trying so hard. I'm very sorry I keep bumping the phone. All right. Now, we had so much to do today, and I really thought we were going to talk more about the President Pretend meeting with Prime Minister Trudeau of Canada, Justin Trudeau. And there's much to go over there, but I think we're going to save that for Friday because so much was happening today that I really didn't expect. And a lot of it has to do with this. It is a new executive order that will be signed today. You remember back a couple of weeks ago when they brought up the chip shortage, not potato chips like the shortage we had during the height of the pandemic, but microchips that's in everything. That's created today. I think baseballs might have microchips in it that the woman stole out of the hands of that poor little girl. But anyway, so now they have finally, it was his priority. He's going to work on it quick. They're finally getting around to the executive order, which will do what? Start a 100-day review. And here it is. Let me move it over. Today, President Biden will sign an executive order to help create more resilient and secure supply chains from critical and essential goods. In recent years, American households, workers, and companies have increasingly felt the strain of shortages of essential products from medicine to food to computer chips. Last year's shortages of personal protective equipment and everything, now down to automotive semiconductors. Why did we have shortages this last year? Because of the pandemic. But we're going to have a 100-day review, which brings us to what, ladies and gentlemen? Another zoo review.
what they do. They learn with their friend Gus and his helper Emmy Joe.
With Freddie!
Charlie!
We have fun learning what we don't know.
Delicate and feminine is Henrietta Hippo. Very wise and very smart is Charlie the Owl. Not so smart with lots of heart is Freddie the Frog. It's quite an unusual thing. The animals talk and sing with Doug and Emmy Joe. Every day's a different show. It's the News Zoo Review, coming right at you. It's the News Zoo Review, coming right at you.
Yes, the New Zoo Review coming right at you. 100-day one. Well, we are going to have to listen to some explanation of this for you to understand why this executive order to spend 100 days to help in the microchip shortage is taking the shape that it is. This, ladies and gentlemen, you heard often during the Trump administration that everybody was fascist. And of course, everybody just treats that with words. But fascism, like National Socialism, is a combination. It's a takeover, but a combination of government and the private sector. And if you will listen, this is what this executive order is really about. And so we have, first we're going to hear from Samira Fazili, or Fazili. I'm not sure. I'm not trying to pronounce it wrong. I just don't know. And actually Peter Harrell came out first, but his is just basic. Samira gets into this. And then Peter will come back and try to dig out of a hole she dug herself into that not everybody probably even realized. So here we have the excited Samira ready to explain to us how the federal government will change and save our lives yet once again.
Thank you, Peter. Creating more resilient supply chains is an opportunity for our country to come together to create well-paying jobs for workers across our country. That is why today's action reinforces the president's overarching commitment to help our country build back better. We know that even before the COVID crisis, the economy was not working for most Americans. Worker pay was too low. Many families could not make ends meet. Many of the jobs that served as the heart of the middle class had been lost due to changes in both technology and the structure of the global economy. Disruption is inevitable, but over the past few years, we have moved from crisis to crisis when some essential product was suddenly in short supply. What we need is a capacity to respond quickly when hit by a challenge. This executive order moves the whole government towards being more prepared. These sector-specific reviews that the president orders today, we're going to be asking agencies to do the following. They're going to review risks in supply chains and in our domestic industrial base. They're going to think broadly about risk. There's climate risk and geopolitical risk, but there's also risk in not having enough workers ready to meet the needs of that sector, or enough factories or the right equipment to make a good or retool a shift to a new spike in demand for an essential good. They're going to be recommending actions to improve resiliency. In some instances, that action might be the data that government can publish, and so the private sector can plan and mobilize and take action. But in other instances, we have levers like procurement authority that we can use to support stockpiling or support some level of domestic production. We are also going to be looking for opportunities to work with Congress to give us more tools so that we can improve our preparedness. And today's conversation with members of Congress is going to be part of an ongoing conversation we've been having with them on this. Finally, a big part of this executive order is consultation with stakeholders and experts. We are going to be reaching out to talk to the American people. Government action alone will not solve complex supply chain challenges. This is going to be broad engagement, broad conversations that will include business, labor, local communities, academia. This work is going to require a new commitment to public-private partnerships, and we need all voices at that table to help us design those partnerships. This is a real opportunity to invest in the future of America and build on our nation's strengths. There are opportunities for small business development to help diversify supplier networks and alleviate the risk of too big to fail companies in the supply chains for critical goods. There are opportunities to improve worker readiness and training so they have the skills needed to ramp up research, production, or distribution of a critical good. And there are opportunities to bring more jobs to communities around the country, including communities of color, to leverage the ingenuity and grit of the American people. This is going to leverage U.S. scientific leadership. It's going to further advance our research and development prowess. It will do so while also recognizing that our ability to maintain our innovative edge in research requires us to invest in both research and manufacturing in communities across America. Because when you pair thinkers and doers, that's how you create the technologies and products that help us tackle tomorrow's challenges. I want to reiterate what my colleagues have said. This work is not going to be about America going it alone. The answer to these weaknesses is not always to ramp up domestic production. We know these vulnerabilities affect not just American households. It's a global problem in some of these supply chains. We are committed to working with partners and allies to reduce these vulnerabilities that are affecting all of us. The work ahead builds upon America's historic legacy of making strategic investments in our future that lay the foundation for broad-based economic growth. Smart investments in research, manufacturing, domestic capacity, and our workforce has in the past unleashed decades of economic expansion, and an expansion that raised wages and living standards for American families across the country. We can and should build upon that legacy, and that is how we will approach this supply chain work. This problem was decades in the making. We can solve it by making smart investments that are long-term in nature, that reach families and workers in all of America. Thank you.
Okay, see if we can take some questions.
Yes, and we're going to take questions, but as you can probably guess, I've got something to say. First of all, before the pandemic broke out, wages were rising, lady. People were getting jobs. The middle class was coming back. It was under the Obama administration that the middle class was being wiped out and wages were plummeting, largely in part to illegal immigration flooding the country, which it's doing now. But that's okay because the government has an answer. The government has an answer. And as you can tell, it's not just for our country. It's not just, oh, we're going to start manufacturing things, as you will find out very soon. But you notice the pairing of the public sector and the private sector, bringing it together like this is going to help. This has never, ever, ever helped. It doesn't help. They're using this as an excuse to take over the economy, to keep us from having shortages. Now, you tell me one time any government has kept any of their countries from having shortages. Ask Venezuela, ask Cuba, ask Russia, ask China. Governments cannot prevent shortages. Governments cause shortages. Yeah, I mean, you can, I have, just before we continue on, it crossed my mind. I had a slide from the State Department, how they're going to get somebody to start pointing out corruption in governments. Of course, not ours, but everybody else's. Anyway, here is the question on manufacturing. And the answer that gets, I'm going to tell you, she got talked to after this.
Okay, see if we can take some questions. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. Presidents for decades have been promising to create factory jobs. We've got about 12.2 million factory jobs. That's down from 17 million in 2000. How many jobs do you think this initiative can create? And what are your metrics of success?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that. I think we think it's important to have a broad lens and broad view on how you measure the jobs and the job creation in the manufacturing space, because manufacturing is doesn't just support and create jobs in the manufacturing sector. There are broad spillover effects that it has. There are going to be R&D jobs here, research jobs here. There's going to be jobs in the kind of supplier networks in the services industry. So I think we have to start tracking and understanding that manufacturing's contributions to our economy can't just be narrowly counted in that way. That's what I would suggest.
Yeah, so no, we're not really looking at creating manufacturing jobs. That's the translation of that. Some supply jobs, some service jobs, things like this, but I really wouldn't look for manufacturing to come back. See, Biden just would have said, oh, millions. This plan alone will create over 1 million new jobs. Yeah, like the raising the minimum wage, which may lift 900,000 people out of poverty, because with that will also come increased benefits, et cetera, et cetera. But at the same time, they'll all lose their jobs because over 1 million jobs will be lost. So no, let's not count manufacturing. Now, Peter jumps in pretty quick because he, probably being some kind of top economic advisor or something, he realizes, hey, people can probably tell she just sidestepped that about manufacturing.
Rare earths. So I think what you're going to see is us come forward with a comprehensive suite of recommendations that will be tailored for each of the different critical goods that we are looking at. In general, across the board, we're expecting we'll be using a mix of incentives to encourage production here, looking at ways to ensure there's surge capacity available for things that might need to be ramped up quickly, stockpiling, working with our allies and partners to make sure that we have, cross-border open flows with our allies and partners where we might collectively need to take some action. So I think we're really going to be looking at a range of different tools here, not just any particular single tool.
Defense production.
Okay, and that was it after the next question. And now, forgive me if I'm wrong. I've only listened to her more times than I care to. But didn't Samira say we're not talking about just ramping up production when there's a shortage? We're not talking about that, because why? See, you've got two different views there. One is we're not talking about manufacturing. The other one is, we're going to be ready to ramp up and see what's happening. The government's going to start deciding who should make what. And they're not, friends, this just isn't good. This is not going to be a profitable study for you, nor I, or anyone else outside of the fenced-in city we call Washington, D.C. And so, thank you, Peter, for that clarification, who just totally contradicted your counterpart there. But it's okay. Now, we do have a little bit of time left, so we're going to go on to some foreign affairs. No, not that type of real things. And this, about Russia, it just brings up the question, why is Russia the bad person now and not China? The Obama administration loved Russia. Russia is just the world's very bad person now. And I'm not defending Russia. Russian leadership, Vladimir Putin is obviously a horrible person. But how come Russia is the new guy that everybody just hates now?
Vladimir Putin said today that Russia's going to redouble its efforts on opposing foreign powers who he says are basically trying to undermine Russia. Does the White House believe that tensions with Russia are increasing?
Well, we believe that certainly over the last several years, there have been more concerning steps that have been taken by Vladimir Putin and by members of the Kremlin, as the president has expressed during the campaign. And that is why he asked his national security team to launch a process of looking into not only hacking, reports of hacking around the 2020 election, but also the bounties on our troops that was of concern. Of course, the the solar winds hack, and to take a close look at that so we have our own assessment. As you know, the president also spoke with President Putin just maybe 2 weeks ago and did not hold back in expressing his concerns about the actions of his government. But we are letting that process see itself through. As I noted yesterday, it will be weeks, not months, before it's concluded, and we have more details about a response.
Yes, weeks, not months, because even though it's top priority of this regime, nothing happens quickly because everything is 100 days or more. That's right. You know, it's just, but listen to this. President Biden spoke his mind to Vladimir Putin. How many believe that? Raise your hand. I see no hands coming up. But with China, he expressed our values. With China, oh, he makes known our values. With Putin, I'm speaking my mind. With China, you know, our values are just kind of like, we love your money. We love you doing things for us. Our values are, we don't care what you do as long as my son keeps getting his check every month. Yeah. Okay. So maybe he didn't put it in those exact words, but with China, he makes our values known. You know, in our country, we really don't like people being taken off because of their religion, unless they're white evangelical nationalists. Then we're okay with it. But in other countries, we don't like it, them being taken off, put in concentration camps, or women raped, and, you know, men beat and tortured, and kids having to work in sweatshops. I just wanted to let you know that. In Russia, oh, we don't like anything you do. We hate you, and we're all but at war with you. And ladies and gentlemen, the Russian bounty on our soldiers in Afghanistan has been greatly disproven, and of course they mention it all the time. Why? Why would they do that? Why would you do that, Jen? Why? Could it be that you are a what? Yes, maybe so, maybe no. Who knows? Who knows? Only the shadow knows. And of course, most people don't know who the shadow is. Anyway, and I'm too old for radio, but I heard that growing up all my life. Now then, the subject that will not go away, Iran.
Thank you, Jen. I have two questions on Iran and Yemen. On Iran, the president opted for diplomacy. But there's worries in the region, in Europe as well, that the ballistic missile development and Iran's interference in the region might not be addressed or linked to the nuclear fund. Can you assure us that actually this is the case? And second, do you believe that Iran is testing your resolve in Iraq by attacking the green zones and the Erbil airport recently?
Well, first, on the first question, can you just say the last part of it again? You were saying, I'm sorry, masks make it difficult.
Are you guys going to link the ballistic missiles development and Iran's interference in four Arab countries to the nuclear file, or are you going to leave it separately? Because there are worries that actually you're very eager to secure a deal and you're going to leave this behind like it happened in 2015.
Well, first, the president's Iran is a long way from compliance, as you well know, from covering this issue quite closely. And the president has been clear that if Iran comes back into full compliance with its obligations, we will do the same. And of course, then use that as a platform to build a longer and stronger agreement, including addressing ballistic missiles and many of the concerns that, as you noted, countries in the region, our European partners have about the actions of Iran. But we are not at that point. The point we are at is that the United States has expressed an openness to an invitation to have a diplomatic conversation. That's the stage we are at. As you know, we have not taken any steps to roll back on sanctions, or to provide, I should say, sanctions relief as has been requested. And we are in a place where we're waiting to see if Iran will, what their response will be to the Europeans' invitation.
So why are you not responding to the attacks in Iraq and elsewhere?
The attacks in Iran, the attacks in Iraq, I should say. Well, first, we have not made a final attribution of the attacks. I will say, as you know, the president spoke with the prime minister last night. This was an extensive part of the conversation. We do hold Iran accountable for the actions of their proxies, and of course, we reserve the right to respond in a manner and at a time of our choosing. But we will respond in a way that's calculated on our timetable and using a mix of tools seen and unseen. What we will not do, and what we've seen in the past, is lash out and risk an escalation that plays into the hands of Iran by further destabilizing Iraq. And that is our priority.
Yes, that's our priority. Can you tell what her priority is? No, nobody knows their priority. The priority is to get money to Iran so they can threaten Israel and keep Israel in line. That's the priority. And destabilize the whole area, because who knows why? Who knows why? There was also another question dealing with Iran. South Korea is working on freeing up some money that has been sanctioned away from Iran. And Iran's not supposed to get. And of course, Jen just said, you might want to talk to the Department of State. What do we have to do with that? See, with Jen, everything's separate. But it's all one regime. And now, if you remember, the Houthis were taking off the terrorism list. And guess what happened? What they think that means.
Since you unlist the Houthis as a terrorist organization, do you believe that the humanitarian situation has improved, considering that now they are trying to take Ma'rib, which is a big city, and some say that they've been emboldened by lifting them from the terror list?
Yes, and as you know, our issue has never been with the people of Yemen, right? And certainly the humanitarian situation has been a long time concern. I don't have an assessment of the humanitarian situation on the ground. The State Department is likely going to have the best assessment of that, but I can also talk to them, or you can, of course, reach out to them directly to get an assessment.
Yes, because, of course, it emboldened them. They're trying to take major cities now. They're not on the terrorist watch list or the terrorism list, which also means they're probably eligible for U.S. military aid. And she, what, really? I didn't know any of that. The Houthis? I thought they were nice people. No, they're murderous thugs. I'm telling you, these people's foreign policy makes Obama's foreign policy almost make sense. Of course, it's under a 100-day review. I'm only laughing to keep from crying, ladies and gentlemen. And so now we come to the time of the show, God formation. Yes, there we are. God formation. A little bit different graphic. There it is. Wasn't that nice? Yes, where's the fireworks? Oh, let's try some new fireworks. Oh, yeah. Yay, God formation. How about that? Man, we're so high tech around here. Sometimes it scares people, I know. But anyway, we have some. We'll do it quickly because it's time to go. There is talk. It's not showing up on very many news reports at all. The Chinese are getting closer and closer to things with their little military jets. Yes, they are. And they've already been buzzing Taiwan, just creasing the airspace a little bit. They're getting closer to our naval jets. Well, watch for them to start getting closer to a whole lot of things to try to see how far they can go with the pretend president, Joseph Biden. All right, and there will not be any response, I'm telling you. Yeah, because we haven't responded at all other than expressing our values. I'm sorry. All right, Congress, because they're moving too slow, everything's just bound up. See, the people behind all of this regime were expecting a lot of things to happen quickly. They're getting a lot of pressure. It's coming from them through the White House to the Capitol. And there's developing a lot of tension there. So how come you're going to get Nancy Pelosi showing herself a little bit? Because, see, Nancy knows she's legitimate in her office. She knows Joe isn't. And she's not going to be taking too much. And, of course, Chuck Schumer's just Chuck Schumer. All right. So there's some miscommunication that has come out from the president's mouth. We will find it and get it to you, and it's pretty big. The press room, as you can tell, they're starting to get annoyed over the lies on immigration and all the talk about Iran and all the double talk on that. So they're starting to catch on. They're slow, but they're getting there. The press is starting to catch on. We don't really have a foreign policy. And when we go over things with Canada, you will see our foreign policy has nothing to do with us. It has to do with everybody else. Of course, our foreign policy is supposed to create middle-class union jobs. Well, they ain't creating them here, ladies and gentlemen. All right. I can never remember her name. What's her last name? The person that they have nominated for her to head the Office of Management and Budget. Look for her name to be withdrawn either by herself or the administration very soon, and maybe a few other surprise withdrawals, because these over-the-top liberals aren't even impressing all Democrats. And also, with all this talk about Russia, Russia is scoring some major victories and some major wins, and they're going to beat the Biden regime. And they are. And we don't know what to do about it because we haven't completed our 100-day study yet. All right, that's it, ladies and gentlemen, for us today. And we are going to leave you with a new exit song. Here we go. Wait a minute. I said, here we go.